What's up, Falcons Nation? It's your boy Jew coming at you guys with another episode of What's the Word Dirty Bird. Tonight we're going to get into a couple different topics. A lot of big things have been happening. A lot of interesting things that have been happening in sports, in the NFL, in general. So we definitely gonna jump into a lot of different topics tonight. Brian Flores, the head coach candidate that was fired from the Miami Dolphins. We're gonna talk about him tonight. We're gonna talk a little bit about the Super Bowl tonight, and then we're also going to do some Q&A as always, some fan Q&A. But before we do that, I want to jump into the chat and say what's up to everybody. Yasuke or Yusuke Knight, what's going on, man? He's the first one in the chat tonight. Joseph Thornton said, "What's up? What's going on, man? I hope you guys are enjoying y'all Wednesday night." We got the wife in the chat. She said, "What's up?" She's ready. Brian Peoples, what up, man? I appreciate y'all joining me tonight. Noah, what's going on, man? Yeah, it's about that time, man. What's going on? And Isaac Crimes, what's going on, man? I appreciate you guys joining me. Like I said, if you guys will go ahead and hit that like button for your boy, also share this content out, I would appreciate it. But like I said, we're gonna jump into a lot of different topics tonight. But the first topic we're gonna jump into, we're gonna talk about Brian Flores suing the NFL due to he's basically saying that the hiring process with the New York Giants was basically a sham, which we basically Bill Belichick, from what Brian Flores is saying, Bill Belichick actually texted him by mistake, congratulating him on the New York Giants position of being a head coach, when he meant to actually reach out to Brian Daboll, who was the offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills, who ended up getting that New York head coaching job for the New York Giants. This was prior to Brian Flores actually going on his interview with the New York Giants. We all know that the NFL does have a Rooney Rule. I think it's been in place for about 19 or 20 years at this point. The NFL basically requires every NFL team or franchise, if they have an opening, that they do have to go in, and if it's a job opening, they have to interview minorities for the position before they hire someone. So as we can see in this instance with Brian Flores and this whole Rooney Rule, it's basically not working. The Rooney Rule doesn't work. A lot of these teams, I really believe, and as we're seeing with Brian Flores, a lot of these teams are just checking the box, as Brian Flores stated, meaning they're either interviewing somebody that's like a assistant already on the staff, just to say that they actually interviewed a minority for the position, or they either just already know who they have in mind as far as who they're going to hire, but they're bringing in these minorities just to check a box or just to state, that they did the Rooney Rule, that they abided by the Rooney Rule by interviewing minorities. So at this point, I love what Brian Flores is doing. He is taking a huge risk, similar to what Colin Kaepernick did when he kneeled a couple years ago. And basically his NFL career was over after that point when he kneeled during the national anthem. This is a similar situation with Brian Flores. Who knows if he'll ever coach again in the NFL, even though he is still in the running for the New Orleans Saints head coaching position, and I believe also the Houston Texans. But who knows if he's going to ever get a chance to actually be a head coach, which would be a terrible thing if he doesn't get another opportunity, because Brian Flores shouldn't have never been fired by the Miami Dolphins, if we're keeping it 100. He was with the Dolphins, I believe, 3 seasons. In the last 2 seasons, he actually had winning seasons, which we all know that the Miami Dolphins haven't been a really good franchise for a very long time, since Dan Marino, which was 20, 30 years ago, when they actually were going to Super Bowls and they were actually a team that was competing for Super Bowls and things of that nature and making deep playoff runs. They pretty much have been one of the worst organizations in the NFL since Dan Marino retired. So at this point, and I believe Dan Marino retired in like 1999 or something like that. So that was over 20 years ago. So at this point, I definitely, like I said, like that Brian Flores actually took a stand against, what's going on as far as racism, as far as not, African Americans and any minority not getting the opportunities to actually, a fair shot at being a head coach, or, getting a fair shot at these positions when they're clearly qualified for the positions. I don't believe that anybody should get a handout. But we see Brian Flores, one of those guys that worked his way up from the ground up. He was a college player at Boston College, where he actually played, I believe, with Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan talked about that a little bit when we were about to face the Miami Dolphins in the regular season. He stated that Brian Flores was on the defensive side of the ball when they both were at Boston College. And he talked about Brian Flores being a leader, being a great leader of men, and being somebody that really understood the game of football. So we all know that Brian Flores is a great leader, is a great coach, or a pretty good coach. The Dolphins, I believe, started off like 1-6 or 1-7 and end up winning the last 8 of 9 games this past season, and actually had a pretty good record. I believe they ended the season like 9-8, if I'm not mistaken, which is a over 500 record. In the last 2 seasons, he's had, like I said, winning records with a quarterback like Tua Tagovailoa, who's a guy who's just an average quarterback at this point, but has been really injury prone since he came out of college, out of Alabama when they drafted him. But like I said, at this point, I just feel like we need to give these minorities a fair shot. And I believe Brian Flores filing this lawsuit against the NFL is going to, put a microscope on the NFL. It's going to draw a lot of negative attention, for the NFL's part of how players are being treated, how minorities are being treated. And when you're in a game that's 70% African American or minority, and you only have one head coach, which is Mike Tomlin for the Pittsburgh Steelers, that's a head coach out of 32 positions, it's a problem. I seen something earlier. I was watching First Things First earlier today, and Nick Wright made a good statement, and I actually retweeted it on Twitter, where he talked about, just imagine if the NHL, which we know pretty much it's only like 1% to 2% minority in the NHL. He basically stated that's like the NHL having only one white head coach. If all of the coaches were mainly minority or majority, 90 to 85, 90% of all of the coaches in the NHL were black. He said, how would that look? And when he put it that way, to me, that was one of the best takes that I actually heard, because I completely agree with him. Like, at this point, whatever you want to say, I don't know if all of the claims that Brian Flores is bringing up are true. I don't see a reason why he would lie about the situation as far as, not getting a fair shot, and, Brian Daboll being hired prior to him interviewing. I really believe that did happen. And I do feel like a lot of these head coaching positions that are open, there's a problem when you have, I believe this year, there's already been like 5 or 6 head coaches that have been hired, and none of these guys are minorities. And you have guys like Eric Bieniemy, who's been in the NFL. He was a player, and now he's been an assistant coach for many years. He's won Super Bowls under Andy Reid with the Chiefs. You have guys that were just kicked out of the league. You have guys like Lovie Smith, who led the Chicago Bears years ago to a Super Bowl. You have guys, Byron Leftwich, that is with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, their offensive coordinator, who hasn't gotten a head coaching opportunity. You have Todd Bowles, the defensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who hasn't got an opportunity to be a head coach. So it's a number of qualified candidates where you see a lot of the times these other guys, like our white counterparts, they're able to basically get handed a job when they haven't even been a coordinator. Like, we've seen Joe Judge for the New York Giants, only had been a special teams coach for the Patriots, basically get the head coaching job for the New York Giants. We've seen guys like Ben McAdoo for the New York Giants years ago get the head coaching job and kind of cut the line, or kind of get these positions when they're really not qualified, and where you've seen African Americans or minorities who've been assistants for 10 plus years, 5 plus years, and they have, been players. They have the resume where they could be a head coach. But with that being said, I do want to jump into the chat, because I see you guys, a couple more people jumped in. my bro, what's going on, VA? He's in the chat. What's going on, man? Let's see. Tony Wright. What's going on, Tony? He said, what's happening? Let's see. That's another good name. Brian Peoples put Jim Caldwell. Yeah, he's another guy who was coaching. He coached for the Indianapolis Colts for a long period of time. And then I forget what coaching job he had before he was let go. It wasn't with the Colts, but he was actually a pretty good coach for another team, and he was let go as the head coach. I can't remember exactly which team that was. I see Noah says Todd Bowles was a Jets head coach. Yeah, he was a Jets head coach. You're right, Noah. But I think when he was with the Jets, he didn't really have a pretty, good record when he was the Jets head coach, but he didn't have the adequate pieces. He didn't have any quarterbacks. And I feel like just because he was a coach before, I do think that he still needs another opportunity, because we've seen, like I said, we've seen, our counterparts, we've seen white head coaches get multiple opportunities. What's the one guy, Coach Gase? I can't think of his first name, but he was with the Miami Dolphins. He got numerous opportunities, even though he was a terrible head coach. There we go. They said the Lions. Yeah, that was the coach that Jim Caldwell was with. He was with the Lions and was actually doing a pretty good job trying to change the culture of the Detroit Lions before he got let go. You had a coach like Steve Wilkes, who was with the Arizona Cardinals for only one season before he got let go, when they hired Cliff Kingsbury, who was actually in college and end up coming right in and being a head coach for the Arizona Cardinals with really not having any NFL experience, not having a resume. Leslie Frazier, that's another good name. I believe he's an assistant coach now with the Vikings, if I'm not mistaken, defensive coordinator, but he's been a guy who was a head coach at one point, but he hasn't gotten another opportunity. And we've seen, like I said, Bill Belichick was a head coach with the Cleveland Browns years ago and was fired and ended up getting the New England Patriots job. Pete Carroll, he was another guy that I believe coached the Patriots, I believe, back in the day, and the Jets. And then he ended up getting another coaching job with the Seattle Seahawks. So the first couple jobs he got, he was fired as well. So sometimes you need time. Like once you get in the, get a head coaching position, yes, head coaches and coaches eventually usually get fired eventually. But I feel like a lot of these franchises, when it comes to African-American coaches in general, they don't give us the same opportunities, the same amount of time to actually build the organization, build a team with draft picks and things of that nature, and build a winning culture. I say a coach needs 3 to 5 years to be able to build a winning culture, be able to draft the players that he needs to, implement his system and bring in, like I said, the guys where you can try to build that winning culture. It takes a couple draft classes to actually come in before you actually able to build a winning culture. It's hard to, jump right in unless you have a team that's already built for you, where the players you already have fit your scheme, or you just have a team that's already stacked. Like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers right now, if their head coach were to leave, Bruce Arians, they kind of have the pieces already in place. The Kansas City Chiefs are another team that's kind of already built. So if Andy Reid were to walk away for any reason, another coach probably could step right in, because they've been a team that's been competing for Super Bowls. You probably could step right into that job and do your thing. But for the most part, a lot of the times as a head coach, we seen last year with Arthur Smith here in Atlanta, where he went 7-10 his first season, and that's mainly because of cap situation and because of the players. Like, yeah, he had this first draft class with Kyle Pitts, Richie Grant, and the guys that they brung in, Tyquan Graham, Ogundeji. Like, he was able to bring in some of his guys, but he's going to need at least 2 or 3 more draft classes to build this complete team with the guys that he needs. So at the end of the day, I'm glad that Brian Flores stepped up and spoke out, even if it ends up costing him his career as a head coach, which he talked about, that he knows the repercussions of his actions. It shouldn't be that way, but we know, just looking back at the Colin Kaepernick situation, we know usually when you're a minority and you speak out, usually because ownership mainly is all white, owners, usually they don't do the right thing when it comes to somebody giving these guys another opportunity. We all know that Colin Kaepernick, when he was let go, when he was banned from the NFL. We all knew that he was still in his prime, that he still could play the game, and he still was one of the best 32 quarterbacks in the world. So we all know that. So we know that he kind of was blackballed at that point. But with that being said, I kind of want to get you guys' thoughts on what you guys think about Brian Flores in this situation. Um, I feel like I said, it's time for change. It is Black History Month, which is the month of February. It's February 2nd. So I think that it's kind of ironic that he decided to make his stand during Black History Month. But I definitely think that he's a trailblazer. Him and Colin Kaepernick, both of those guys, showed great courage, or showing great courage with him stepping up, because somebody's going to be able to stand on Brian Flores' shoulder. Once more African American coaches are hired or given fair opportunities and equality, I think we'll see, more guys, that'll be able to stand on Brian Flores' shoulders, and it'll be worth it. Even if he doesn't get another head coaching job, I think he'll feel like it was worth it. Like Colin Kaepernick, I think Colin Kaepernick, him taking that stand, he feels a lot better about what he did now, because it drew a lot of attention to the NFL. It drew a lot of attention to society, police brutality, and a lot of stuff that's going on in the U.S. As far as police brutality, racism. He drew a lot of attention to that, and being that sports, a lot of attention is placed on sports because it's entertainment. I think that these guys, you have that platform, and as an African American, it's important that you use your platform to bring others along with you and bring others up. And I think that both Brian Flores and Colin Kaepernick in this instance did that with their platform. And I think that both of those guys should be commended for what they've done. But I do want to hear what you guys got to say as well. And I've seen a couple more people have joined the chat as well. So I do want to reach out to you guys. Let's see here. He says Dennis Green, lucky got multiple coaching opportunities. Rep. Yeah, Dennis Green was one of those guys with the Minnesota Vikings, Arizona Cardinals. He was actually one of those coaches that did get multiple opportunities. And mainly that was because he was a coach that was actually winning. So I don't want to act like all the NFL owners are racist, or I don't like to paint with a broad paintbrush and say that all white people are racist or all the owners in the NFL are racist, because I don't know that. I just think that we need change. Like when you have, like I said, 70 to 80% of the league being African American or minority, and you only have one head coach in the league, one African American head coach in the league, something has to change at the end of the day. And I think that's why Brian Flores has taken this stand, not just because of the sham interviews that are being done, but because it's just change has to happen. Like the Rooney Rule's been in place for, like I said, 19 to 20 years, and we're still not seeing at least I believe at least we should see 50 to maybe at least 50 to 45% of the league as far as head coaches should be minority. Like it's no way that it's only 1%, one head coach, one or two black head coaches in the league, and you have guys like I mentioned that have the experience. Brian Peoples bring up a good name, Anthony Lynn. Yeah, he was with the Chargers for a little while. Let's see. Bridget, what's going on tonight? She says Brian Flores ain't playing with these folks. He been on like 3 shows today. Salute to Brian Flores. He's on MSNBC right now. Yeah, I love what he's doing. I'm glad that he took his lawyers with him on TV. I seen him. It was on, I think, Good Morning America. He was on ESPN this morning. So I think he's doing the right thing to spread this as much as possible and bring as much attention to this as possible, because not only is this going to shed light on the NFL and what's going on in the NFL, but it's going to shed light on what's going on in America in general. Like opportunities, just not in the NFL, but in the corporate world and just as a whole, we have to do better, about equality. We have to do better at the end of the day. And it starts at the top. Breaking news. Tony Wright says Jim Harbaugh interviewed for the Minnesota Vikings coaching position, but has now decided to stay as the head coach in college for Michigan Wolverines. Yeah, I didn't think that Jim Harbaugh would leave Michigan, to be honest. I think it's going to be really hard to get Jim Harbaugh out of Michigan because he's making really good money with Michigan, and that's his alma mater. So I don't see Jim Harbaugh. I don't know why they keep trying to interview him and pull him away from college. I think that Jim Harbaugh and Michigan are like a match made in heaven. Like that's where he played his college ball as a quarterback, and that was his dream job. So if you get your dream job, I think it's going to be really, really hard to get Jim Harbaugh away from Michigan, to be honest. Even though they say money talks, I really think it's going to be really hard because he loves living in Michigan. Like I said, he went to college there. He's familiar, with the campus and things of that nature. And I just feel like he has more job security. Like we see how the NFL within 3 years, most of these coaches are getting fired. So he has a better chance of just staying at Michigan, winning his 9 or 10 games a year, and not having to worry about the pressure of winning. Like the pressure is not the same. The main pressure he has in college is just recruiting at this point. Going and sitting on mom and dad's couch and trying to recruit guys to come to Michigan. But other than that, he don't have to worry about his job security, especially because he got over the hump this year and finally beat Ohio State and was able to get to the college football playoff. I really think that Jim Harbaugh is pretty safe there in Michigan. So I think it's going to be really, really hard to get him away from Michigan, unless, like I said, unless somebody pays him some astronomical, contract. That's the only way I can see him actually leaving. What's going on, Mad Mike Sports? What's happening, man? I appreciate you joining me tonight. You guys, make sure you guys go over and hit that like and subscribe button on Mad Mike's channel as well. Let's see. Pizza says, is there any updates on Calvin Ridley? I don't believe that there's any updates. They actually talked to Terry Fontenot today. He was actually down at the Senior Bowl, so that's a little bit of Atlanta Falcons news. I didn't get a chance to talk about it. Him, Arthur Smith, and Terry Fontenot were both down at the Senior Bowl. They're down there right now, and I believe Mobile, Alabama, where they have the bowl games for the seniors, and they are actually out there scouting players as we speak. And I believe it was one of the beat writers for the Falcons basically stated that they asked Terry Fontenot about Calvin Ridley, and he basically stated that there's no updates on Calvin Ridley. So at this point, I don't know what's going on with Calvin Ridley. To be honest with you guys, I'll be shocked if Calvin Ridley's the Atlanta Falcon next year. The way that things are looking and the way that things are sounding, because we're not hearing anything, I'll be surprised if he's not traded either before the draft or during the draft. Like I think Calvin Ridley is probably going to get moved. I think a fresh start probably will be best for both the organization and for Calvin Ridley at this point. I don't know if Calvin Ridley wants out, but I did hear, I think we all heard about the fiasco with him liking a comment. I believe it was either on Instagram where he liked the comment of him possibly being traded to the Miami Dolphins, which their organization right now is under immense scrutiny right now because of this Brian Flores situation. So at the end of the day, I don't know what's going to happen with Calvin Ridley, but I really think that eventually he'll be traded because I think you will be able to get some assets for him, and I think that might be the best thing at this point. If you guys has joined and haven't hit the like button, please hit that like button for your boy. Definitely hit that subscribe button if you're new. If you're new to the stream, definitely drop that in the chat as well, stating that I'm new or this is my first time viewing a live stream or viewing your channel. I'd like to shout you out as well. Let's see. It says no quarterback in Minnesota either. Yeah, Minnesota. I thought they have Kirk Cousins. I don't know if Kirk Cousins' contract is up, but if his contract is up, he may end up being re-signed. I don't know if they have a quarterback or not. I think Kirk Cousins is still under contract. Let's see. Tony Wright says, true that Flores was 5-11 in 2019, 10-6 in 2020, barely missed the playoffs, and 9-8 this past season in 2021. And that's my point, Tony Wright, or you or Isaac, whoever made the comment about Brian Flores. He didn't deserve to be fired. Like when you go 10-6, when you go 9-8, in back-to-back seasons, I feel like you have to be patient with these head coaches, and that's whether they're white or black. I don't care really what color you are. these coaches need time. Like I said, 3 to 5 years is what I would give a head coach. And I'll lean in more towards the 5 year mark, unless it's just a lot of dysfunction going on in the organization, kind of like what was happening with Urban Meyer with the Jacksonville Jaguars, where he was fired within the first season because there was a lot of stuff being said by the players, and there was a lot of things that was going on off the field with Urban Meyer, as far as him bringing in Tim Tebow and letting him try out as a tight end, and a lot of the stuff that they said was going on in the organization, under the cover or behind the scenes. Unless it's some bad dealings going on, I feel like a head coach needs to like about 3 to 5 years at least to build a team. I think you need to give coaches at least 3 to 5 years to see what you have. I don't think you will know within the first year or so, or first year or two. And if you have 3 seasons and 2 of the seasons were winning seasons, whether you made the playoffs or not, if you were over 500, we know how hard it is to win in the NFL. So at this point, like I said, we all know that Brian Flores being fired had nothing really to do with on the field. And if you guys go in from what I'm hearing from Brian Flores and what he's basically stating, Stephen Ross, who I believe is the president of the team or owns the team, he basically was offering him $100,000 for every loss. So if that's true, that he was being offered the tank, like offer extra money to lose games, that just goes to show you right there. And that's why I say that the Dolphins organization is just a terrible organization altogether, because they are now messing with the integrity of the game when you're forcing the head coach to lose games or asking the head coach to lose games. So that could be another reason why he was let go as well. Or that probably was the reason he was let go. Now, thank you for tuning in. Todrick Davis, what's going on, man? Please hit that like and subscribe button. I appreciate you tuning in tonight. And please share out this content as well. And let us know if you're an Atlanta Falcons fan or what team you're a fan of. You don't have to be an Atlanta Falcons fan to tune in. I talk about pretty much any team. Like, I watch the NFL as a whole, but I am an Atlanta Falcons fan, and most of my content is Atlanta Falcons, unless it's a big headline, NFL headline like this Brian Flores situation. I mainly talk about the Falcons, but I appreciate it. Let's see here. Tony Wright says, I watched the Senior Bowl practice today, and I hope that we can draft Jermaine Johnson, Florida State, with our second round draft pick at the number 40th pick. He's 6'5", 265, and a beast. Yeah, and I've actually started doing some breakdowns on a couple of draft prospects. I have a couple of videos that I got to drop on my channel, but I've been extremely busy. But I'm definitely going to drop a couple prospect videos this week. And Jermaine Johnson is one of those guys that is on my list. I haven't been able to watch his tape yet to see, how good he is. And I didn't get a chance to check out the Senior Bowl practices or anything like that. I just seen a couple of clips that a couple people put on either Twitter. I seen a couple of clips from Twitter of different players, but I didn't get to see Jermaine Johnson. But I know that he's a pass rusher. And you guys know that I'm all about the trenches. Like, we need as many guys in the trenches as possible. We need to be able to rotate, guys in the trenches. And with that being said, we can kind of go ahead to the next topic. Since you're already talking about draft picks and stuff like that, we can kind of segue into that and kind of want to talk about the Super Bowl matchup. And what you're talking about, the trenches and drafting guys in the trenches. Your boy did go 2-0 in my predictions for the AFC and NFC championship game. I did have the Bengals beating the Kansas City Chiefs, which they end up winning in the thriller in overtime. And I also did have the Rams beating the 49ers in my bracket as well. So it's going to end up being the 49ers and the Cincinnati Bengals. Who would have thought that these two teams would end up the final two teams to meet in the Super Bowl? Another Super Bowl where the home team is playing in their own stadium in back-to-back seasons. How weird is that? The Tampa Bay Buccaneers won the Super Bowl last year in their home stadium, and this year the Cincinnati Bengals have a chance to win. The LA Rams have a chance to win the Super Bowl in their home stadium. So I think that that's really awkward, or really weird to see two teams in back-to-back seasons play Super Bowls on their home field, which it had never been done in NFL history prior to last year. But I digress. With that being said, we were talking about the trenches, and it's a couple guys that or these two teams are very good in the trenches that are in the Super Bowl. The Cincinnati Bengals with Trey Hendrickson, the former New Orleans Saints defensive end, Sam Hubbard on the other end, coming off the edge, DJ Reader, BJ Hill. Those guys did an excellent job against Pat Mahomes in that game last Sunday in the AFC Championship game. On the Rams side, Von Miller, Leonard Floyd, Aaron Donald, those guys are very good in the trenches as well. So you guys know I always talk about the trenches is what the Falcons need to build to be a Super Bowl, franchise, to be able to win a Super Bowl. You have to be able to play well in the trenches. And even the teams that lost in the AFC Championship game, the Kansas City Chiefs, Chris Jones at the nose tackle position, on the outside, Frank the Shark Clark. They have guys on the edge as well that can get after the passer. In the 49ers, we know that they're tough in the trenches with Bosa coming off the edge, with Eric Armstead and the crew that they have over there. They have a ton of guys as well that can get after the passer. So I feel like the Falcons, if we want to be able to get to a Super Bowl, we're definitely going to have to build the trenches. That's going to be the most important thing in this offseason, is building the trenches on the offensive line and defensive line. You have to be able to affect the quarterback, get the quarterback off his spot, have to be able to sack the quarterback, and you have to be able to stop the run. And the two teams that we're seeing in this Super Bowl are teams that are very good in the trenches, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Cincinnati is not the best on the offensive line side. They gave up 9 sacks against the Tennessee Titans in their first matchup in the playoffs. And then they gave up a couple of sacks last week to the Chiefs, but they're solid on the offensive line. But on the other end, the Rams are good both on their defensive line and their offensive line. So this should be a really good matchup. I'll talk about my predictions of who's going to win the Super Bowl next week, because we know that the Super Bowl is not this Sunday, but it's next Sunday. So I really don't want to, give my predictions on that yet. I'll kind of hold on to that and make you guys join me next Wednesday, where we'll talk about the Super Bowl a little bit. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about the matchup. You have two really solid quarterbacks. You have Matthew Stafford, the longtime veteran for the Detroit Lions, and now he's getting an opportunity to play with a complete team and was able to lead the Rams to the Super Bowl in his first season, similar to what Tom Brady was able to do when he went over to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year and lead those guys to a Super Bowl championship. And then you have Joe Burrow, one of the up-and-coming gunslingers in the game. He could be the first quarterback ever to win the Heisman, win a college national championship, and win a Super Bowl. So that would be amazing if Joe Burrow could, win the Triple Crown, if you will, if he's able to win those 3, championships, Heisman, and possibly be like a Super Bowl MVP. That would be crazy. But he's definitely looks like he's going to be one of the great quarterbacks for years to come. To me, it's amazing how well Joe Burrow is playing after tearing his ACL and PCL last year. For him to be able to come back and basically play, be fearless and play like nothing ever happened is really special. I really think that Joe Burrow is a special quarterback, and I really think this Cincinnati is going to be a team in the AFC for years to come that could be one of those teams that's knocking on the door and possibly competing for multiple Super Bowls for years to come, because they have a really young team. Jamal Chase at wide receiver is a rookie. They have a ton of weapons. T. Higgins is on his first deal. I believe he's still like a second or third year player. Tyler Boyd in that slot wide receiver position. Joe Mixon, I believe, also is like in his third or fourth season in the NFL. So they're extremely young, and they're a team that's going to be a team competing with the Chiefs and competing with those upper echelon teams in the AFC. As far as the LA Rams side, they're another team that's loaded, but they went all in for this year. I mean, they went out and got Von Miller. They went out and got Odell Beckham. Cooper Kupp is amazing. A lot of people are forgetting that they got Robert Woods, who's actually injured, got injured for the season, who plays wide receiver. Tyler Higbee. They also have in the backfield Cam Akers, who tore his Achilles in July and was able to miraculously come back, which is crazy. He tore his Achilles in the during training camp and was able to come back and compete in the playoffs. So it's just a ton of storylines, and I definitely am looking forward to this Super Bowl. It should be a really good game because you have two teams that are really good, good complete teams, good on offense and defense. But I do think it'll be a high scoring game because you have two teams that are really good and like to throw the ball down the field. You have two offensive minded head coaches with Sean McVay, and on the opposite end, Zach Taylor for the Bengals. Though both of those guys are really young offensive minds in the game, but two of the smarter head coaches in the game. So definitely looking forward to a good Super Bowl matchup. Like I said, this isn't the Super Bowl that everybody expected, but I'm glad that we're seeing some new blood. It's not the Tom Brady's, it's not the Aaron Rodgers, it's not the guys that we've seen win Super Bowls. I wish it was Matt Ryan and the Falcons competing for another Super Bowl. Hopefully we can get back in maybe a couple years, but definitely looking forward to this matchup. But with that being said, we're gonna jump back into the chat and see what you guys are talking about, because I see a lot of comments that I've missed. Let me scroll up a little bit. Let's see. King Quest, what's going on, man? I didn't get to shout you out, but I did see you were in the chat earlier. I appreciate you joining me tonight. He says, question, knowing Jimmy G is going to be out of San Francisco, what team you see him going to? This is a good question. I think Jimmy G goes to a team like maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers. They have a solid defense, I really think, or maybe like the Washington football team, now the Washington Commanders, because they don't really have a starting quarterback. They got Taylor Heineke. I think those teams would be two great fits for a guy like Jimmy G, because Jimmy G needs to be in a team that is basically has a solid defense, where the structure is kind of already built around him. I don't want to see him go to a team like the Carolina Panthers, or a team where he's going to have to be the focal point of the offense. You want him to go to a team that has a strong defense, kind of like the 49ers has a strong running game. And, the Pittsburgh Steelers have Najee Harris. So they could actually, they kind of built the team around him, and they have a really good head coach who's never actually had a losing season, in Mike Tomlin. So I think the Steelers would be a perfect fit, I think, for Jimmy G, because they're like the AFC version of the 49ers as far as their physicality. But I think that those are the two teams. The Washington football team is another team that's really good in the trenches with Chase Young and Montez Sweat, and all of the guys that they have over there, Jonathan Allen. I really think that they're a strong defense. So I think I could see him going there as well, because they have Scary Terry McLaurin at wide receiver. They have some nice pieces on that team as well. And then they have Ron Rivera as the head coach, who's a defensive-minded coach. But they are another team that's not going to just rely on Jimmy G to be that guy. Let's see. Test Sports and Gaming, what's going on, man? He says, today we had an interview. We had interviewed Liberty's Malik Willis and Georgia's Slater, Jamari Slayer. Yeah, I like both of those guys. I think Malik Willis is a guy, if we take a quarterback, he's a guy that I really like, and I could see him fitting in a scheme that Arthur Smith runs, because Arthur Smith, if you remember, in Tennessee, he was with Ryan Tannehill, who's an athletic quarterback who can not only throw, but does the RPO, can run, does a lot of bootlegs and things of that nature in the play action game. And Malik Willis will be like a perfect fit in this Atlanta Falcons offense because he is an athletic quarterback. He's a guy with those bootlegs that can run the ball, can throw the ball down the field. And this is a run-heavy offense, and he's good at being able to get outside the pocket and things of that nature. So I definitely think Malik Willis, if we decide to take a quarterback, he would be the quarterback that I would take out of the draft, out of these guys that I've seen so far in the draft. Slayer, I like him a lot as well. I believe, like you say, he's a guard that played with Georgia, if I'm not mistaken. And he's a guy that's really physical as well, played really well in the championship game against Alabama. So I definitely wouldn't mind seeing him on our Atlanta Falcons as well. I wouldn't take him with the number 1 pick at number 8, but maybe a second or third round pick. Maybe you decide if you want to bolster the defensive line, maybe you bring in Slayer. But I definitely think both of those guys are solid guys. And I did see that I think D-Led stated that we did interview those two guys at the Senior Bowl, but both of those guys I have my eye on, and they're definitely on my draft board. I definitely think that those guys are solid. Let's see. A1, he says Traylon Burks, Felipe Franks was his quarterback. We're getting Burks. Ooh, I didn't even think about that. That's a really good that's a really good idea that you have. Felipe Franks did play with Traylon Burks. And I think Felipe Franks, what you're saying that A1, a lot of people are sleeping on Felipe Franks. I think he's a guy, and that's the reason why I wouldn't take a quarterback in this draft. If we do decide to take a quarterback, I would take Malik Willis, because I think, to me personally, out of the guys that I've seen, he's, to me, the number one quarterback on my draft board. Him, and then I like Desmond Ridder as well. But Malik Willis is the number one quarterback that I have out of this draft class. But I like Felipe Franks, and I think Josh Rosen, who's the backup quarterback. Both of those guys are solid. Like, Josh Rosen is still really young. He has experience, and he could be a bridge guy. So I really wouldn't waste draft capital on a quarterback, because the Falcons have so many holes right now as far as we have to fill. We have a lot of guys that are free agents, and we still are not out of cap hell. The cap is going up a little bit, so we do have some money, and we're in a better position, in a better headspace than we were in last year. But I still think that we have to be careful, with using these draft picks wisely. And if I were the Falcons, I wouldn't take a quarterback, because Matt Ryan, his contract, that cap hit is like over $40 million. If I were the Falcons, I would extend Matt Ryan. If he's, willing to extend, I would extend him for like another year or two. And then I would worry about the quarterback a little bit down the road. I would continue to keep trying to develop Felipe Franks, develop Josh Rosen, because both of those guys have experience. Both of those guys are solid. But I never thought about Traylon Burks, because him and that connection with him and Felipe Franks. And personally, I think Felipe Franks could be a starting quarterback. I don't know about franchise quarterback, but he could definitely be a starting quarterback in the NFL. He will have to prove if he's the franchise guy, but he's another guy that's athletic, as I mentioned. We've seen Felipe Franks in the preseason play, and he had a 50-yard run. So he's a guy that's similar to a Malik Willis. I don't know if he's as athletic or as fast as Malik Willis or explosive, but Felipe Franks is a guy that can get out of harm's way if he needs to. Similar to like a Joe Burrow, similar to a Ryan Tannehill. Both of those guys are not going to blow you away with their speed, but Felipe Franks does have extreme arm strength, can throw the ball down the field. And if you continue to develop him, if you do draft Traylon Burks, they do have a connection because they played together in college, similar to Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. And Tony Wright says he likes Cincy secondary versus the Rams receivers. I don't know about that. I think the Rams receivers they're special. Like Odell Beckham, Cooper Kupp. I'm not trying to see those guys man to man. The Bengals, one thing I like about the Bengals is they have a lot of guys that a lot of teams didn't want. They have a lot of misfits. Like they have Woozier, who was a Dallas Cowboy. They didn't re-sign him. They have Eli Apple, who's kind of been a journeyman since he was with the Saints. I think he was drafted by the New York Giants, but he's played for the Saints as well. He's played for a couple different teams, and it didn't pan out for him. So they have a lot of guys that just scrap. To me, the secondary for the Cincinnati Bengals isn't great. They just have guys that, like I said, that are scrappers, guys that are misfits, and guys that are proving themselves. Like defense is not really about, having individual players necessarily. You have to be able to play well collectively. And to me, the Bengals defense, they play on the string. They play good collectively. Like guys understand their job and what they're supposed to be doing. When you're able to hold the Chiefs, who's one of the best offenses in the league, if not the best offense in the NFL, to 3 points in the second half of that AFC Championship game, that's really special on the defensive side of the ball. And Cincinnati did that in that second half, in the third and fourth quarters. And they got to stop in overtime to basically get the ball back for Joe Burrow to go down and drive down to have the game with, put them in position to kick the game-winning field goal. But if I had to take Cincinnati's secondary or the Rams receivers, I'm taking the receivers of the Rams if it's just head up. but I do see where you're coming from because the Cincinnati Bengals, as a whole, their defense plays well together. Let's see. Tony Wright says, "Congrats to former Falcon Ricardo Allen as he returns to another Super Bowl, backing up Jesse Bates." Yeah, he is on the Cincinnati Bengals roster. Doesn't play a whole lot, but I wouldn't mind seeing Ricardo Allen. He was one of those guys who was a grinder when he was with the Falcons, got cut, and kind of got it out of the mud. And he's the underdog, and I love the underdog. So shout outs to Ricardo Allen. Hopefully he can get his first ring with the Bengals since he was released by the Atlanta Falcons. So good luck to him, and hopefully he's able to pull it off. Let's see here. Now I'm gonna scroll through a little bit in the chat, and then I also want to get into, and I can go ahead and bring it up here. We're gonna go ahead and get into some fan Q&A because we're getting near the 15-minute mark of the show. You guys know I don't like to stay on no more than an hour. So it is going to be fan Q&A. If you guys want to go ahead and drop those questions in the chat, even though I've already answering you guys' questions. If you have a particular question, I wouldn't mind answering it. But I see a couple comments in here that I need to get to as well. Let's see here. Uh-oh, hold on. Another breaking news here. So breaking news, Tony Wright says more breaking news. The Minnesota Vikings intend to finalize their open head coach position by naming the LA Rams offensive coordinator Kevin O'Connell as their next head coach. I don't know a whole lot about Kevin O'Connell, but shouts out to him on getting the job. If he did get that Minnesota Vikings job, shouts out to him. I don't know if that's a good fit for the Minnesota Vikings because the Minnesota Vikings are known as being a defensive-minded football team when they had the last head coach that they had, and they kind of been known for being a defensive-minded team. But hopefully it works out for them. I mean, they do still have some explosive weapons on the offense. You have Dalvin Cook. You have Jefferson at the wide receivers position. You have Adam Thielen, the wide receiver, who's really special. And then I don't know if Kirk Cousins' contract is up, but if not, you do have Kirk Cousins still as well. So shouts out to him, and I appreciate you dropping that in the chat, Tony Wright. If he did end up getting that head coaching job, shouts out to him. Let's see here. Tell Sports and Gaming. Let's see. He says we got win this next season division. I think he's talking about we have to win our division next year. Basically, he says Sean Payton, Brady leaving, Matt Rule need keep struggling. Find out the NFL is not like college, but Falcons got to be our year. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Tell Sports and Gaming. I get the gist of what you're saying. I definitely think that the Falcons this year have a really good chance of being a team that could compete for the NFC South crown, especially because we're the most stable team, I'll say, in the NFC South right now as far as head coach. They have a year under their belt with the system. You have Matt Ryan in place, who now is the league leader in passing yards. Now that Tom Brady's retired, Matt Ryan is currently, as far as active players, he has the most passing yards with almost 60,000 passing yards in his career. So he now leads the NFL in active players as far as passing yards. And at this point, he's basically the veteran and the best quarterback in the NFC South at this point. So we'll see if that, coincides with us winning the division next year. I'm definitely going to talk about that in one of my live shows as a topic, but I definitely think the Falcons have a chance. I think it's too early to tell if the Falcons will win or be favored to win the division next year because I have to see who ends up getting the New Orleans Saints job as the head coach. I have to see who the Saints end up bringing in as their quarterback. Are they going to stick with Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill, or are they going to go out and draft or bring in a veteran guy like a Jimmy Garoppolo or somebody like that to be their quarterback? So at this point, I'm not too sure about that if we're the favorites or not, because the Falcons, like I said, we have a lot of free agents. So our team, we got a lot of work to do. Let's see here. And we got to get to a super chat really quick. If it'll pop up. Let me see if I can bring it up here. I got to scroll to it. Let's see. It ain't coming up for me. StreamYard don't want to let me be great. I think it's coming up now. Here it go. I appreciate the super chat, $5 super chat. He says, love you, bro. Keep up the great content. I appreciate that. And that's my younger brother right there. So shouts out to you, man. VA, I appreciate that $5 super chat or the $5 holler. I would ring the bell, but the baby boy is sleeping. So I appreciate you dropping that $5 super chat. Shouts out to my other brother in the chat. He says the Bears, and he's a Chicago Bears fan. As I told you guys, I am from Chicago. So he says, Jew, what up? What about the Bears? Yeah, the Bears, they actually hired the Colts defensive coordinator. I believe his name is Matt Eberflus, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if that's who they should have taken. Personally, I think they should have tried to get Sean Payton out of retirement because they have Justin Fields that they drafted last year. And I don't think that was the smartest thing for them to bring in a defensive-minded head coach. Personally, I feel like if you do have a young quarterback, you need to bring in an offensive-minded head coach or a strong offensive coordinator that can, and a strong quarterbacks coach that can kind of cater to that quarterback and kind of bring him along. So I don't know if I agree with the Bears signing Matt Eberflus. I think it's solid for Chicago because they're a defensive-minded team, and Matt Eberflus, that's what he does best. But he better bring in somebody that can call plays and that can develop a quarterback, because if they don't develop a quarterback, they're going to have a really hard time. And they have to build around Justin Fields. They don't have enough weapons. Other than Allen Robinson, who's currently a free agent, if I'm not mistaken, they definitely have work to do there in Chicago as far as bringing in weapons for Justin Fields, and they have to build in the trenches on that offensive line, because this year Justin Fields was, taking a lot of punishment and running for his life. But I definitely think that Matt Eberflus is a good defensive-minded coach. I think that Dan Quinn wouldn't have been a bad hire as well for the Chicago Bears because he's a defensive-minded coach, and he possibly, he has those relationships where he may have been able to bring in, offensive coordinator like he did with Kyle Shanahan. He could bring in somebody that has the experience. ATM, what's going on, man? This is the Receipt Man on Twitter. So shout out to my boy ATM. He said, what's up, Jew? With the news of Hugh Jackson and Brian Flores getting paid bonuses to lose games, do you believe the NFL will start to do a draft lottery like the NBA to prevent blatant tanking? This is a great statement. This might be the statement of the night. So shouts out to ATM. Not too sure if they'll do like a lottery, but I think they should do something to try to mix up who gets that number one pick, because it's kind of too easy right now where it's like teams are just tanking. But at the end of the day, if you tank and say you end up having the same record as another team, then that's when tiebreakers and things of that nature comes in. So it's not really a way where you can guarantee yourself getting the number one pick, even if you're tanking, if there's multiple teams doing it at one time, meaning multiple teams tanking. But at the same time, who knows, But I think that this is a great statement by ATM that they may look at doing a lottery, because if we have a lot of these teams at the bottom that are tanking, that prevents them from tanking, because you're not guaranteed. Even if you lose every single game and go 0-17, that doesn't guarantee that you're going to get a number one pick. And a lot of teams like the Cleveland Browns, they tanked for years and years and years and got like a ton of number one picks and still really didn't do much with it as far as, them being a winning franchise. But I think that would be something that the league should think about. Definitely. Like, I definitely would think about lottery. I think that would be something that would be great for the league, as far as it will prevent teams from trying to tank. Because if you're not guaranteed that number one pick, then it's like, you basically tanking for nothing at that point. And we got another super chat if I can get to it. These super chats is, and I appreciate you guys flooding the questions, man. I really appreciate you guys tuning in tonight and flooding the comment section with questions and you guys chatting with each other, man. I really appreciate that because y'all make the show easy for me. I can just click on, your questions and answer the questions. Even though we don't like coming up on a 5-minute warning because it's 8:56, but I'll try to stick in here and answer a couple more questions for you guys. But shouts out to Mad Mike with the $5 super chat. He says thoughts on the Rams D line versus Cincy's O line. This is another good question and something that I'm really interested and intrigued about. I think in this game, the Rams D line has the upper hand, of course, because Cincinnati's offensive line, as much as I talked about those guys toughing it out, and I think they have one guy that was a guard on their team. His last name is Spain. He basically is an undrafted free agent. He talked about that. I seen he had put something on Twitter stating that he was undrafted. So the Bengals, like I said, they're the team of misfits. They're the team that they got a bunch of players that nobody wanted, and those guys just grinded. And that's the reason why I kind of like this Cincinnati team. It gives me hope as an Atlanta Falcons fan that our Falcons can go from the bottom to the top, because the Cincinnati Bengals is one of those organizations that have been at the bottom so long. They hadn't played in a Super Bowl or AFC Championship game since 1989, which is a long time. I was born in 1989. So it's been 30-something years since they actually been in a Super Bowl. So for them to be underdogs, and make it to the Super Bowl, it gives me hope as an Atlanta Falcons fan. But just as far as the matchup, to answer your question, man, Mike, I think the Rams definitely have the upper hand. When you're talking about Von Miller, who's definitely going to be a Hall of Famer, Aaron Donald, who's definitely going to be a Hall of Famer, then Leonard Floyd, Gaines. I mean, they got so many guys they rotate in on that defensive line for the Rams. They're a team that, like, I wish the Atlanta Falcons had that type of depth on the defensive line. They're a team that can rotate like line shifts because they're so good, and they can bring in multiple guys. They can move guys. Like Aaron Donald, you can line him up anywhere on the defensive line, inside or outside. The same thing with a guy like Von Miller. He's so experienced that on certain downs, you can slide him inside, or you can even have him come off the ball, like where he's more like a linebacker in a 2-point stance. So him and Leonard Floyd, both of those guys are so versatile, and they have so many versatile pieces. I think that the Rams definitely had an upper hand against Cincinnati. I just think that Cincinnati is not afraid of anybody, and they're a team that's coming in and they believe they can beat anybody. Like if you go to Arrowhead, which to me, I think Arrowhead at this point is the toughest place to play. I think they have the toughest building to win in the NFL. They'd have those rabid fan base there in Kansas City. And they've been a team that has been in back-to-back Super Bowls. And this was their 4th AFC Championship game in a row. For them to go up, Cincinnati to be able to go to Arrowhead and beat Kansas City after being down 21-3 at halftime, that just shows guts, and that shows that they could beat anybody. Like, I don't put it past the Bengals that they're going to compete in this game, and I wouldn't be surprised if they won in this game. But I do think the Rams had an upper hand, and I do think even if the Rams get after Joe Burrow, like the Titans got after him, where they had 9 sacks in that first matchup in the divisional round, that doesn't guarantee that the Rams will win the game unless they're able to turn Joe Burrow over. To me, that's the only shot the Rams defensive line has. It's like they're going to have to cause a forced fumble or something like that, or force an interception or something like that. If they're just getting to Joe Burrow and just, sacking him and things of that nature, Joe Burrow seems like he's one of those quarterbacks that's not really fazed by, getting sacked, because the Tennessee Titans, like I said, they sacked that man 9 times and they still won the game. So that's another thing that I love about Joe Burrow is he like Joe Cool. It doesn't look like he's ever really rattled. Like even when he's getting sacked, he kind of puts me in the mind of a guy like Eli Manning for the Giants. When he played, he was a player that never showed any type of emotion, whether he was winning, whether he was losing, whether he was getting sacked, or whether he was protected. Eli Manning never showed any type of emotion. And that's kind of how Joe Burrow plays the game. Is when I watch him play, he just seems like he plays with great poise. He's never, rattled in the pocket. And he's shown that all playoff long, that even though he's been under duress, he's been able to make accurate throws and, keep his eyes down the field. And to me, that's what makes a special quarterback. But I appreciate that super chat, Mad Mike, and appreciate the question. I'm gonna answer a couple more questions because it is 9 o'clock, but I'm gonna try to scroll through and see if I can answer somebody's question that I haven't answered tonight, as well as take a look because there's a lot of questions here. Let's see. And shouts out to my brother-in-law in the chat. Darius, what's happening, man? He's a Minnesota Vikings fan. So shouts out to you. I heard that y'all just got a new head coach. So shouts out to y'all. Let's see here. Ultra Shadow, what's happening, man? He says, Utah, what do you think about Washington new team name, the Washington Commanders? This is a good question. I don't like the new name for the Washington football team. I really would wish that they would have went with the Washington Red Wolves or the Washington Red Tails, kind of like the movie, the airplanes and things of that nature. I think that would have been really cool if they were the Red Tails, Washington Red Tails, or the Red Wolves. I think those names were better. I don't like the Commanders. The Commanders sound like an XFL name or an arena football team. That's like the Washington Gladiators or something like that. I wish they would have went with the red, either the Red Tail or the Red Wolves. I think those would have been better names. But shouts out to Washington for at least it's better than the football team. At least they actually now have an actual name or a mascot. So shouts out to them. But I don't like the new name. I prefer the Red Wolves or the Red Tails. I think those would have been better names. Let's see. And YMOF Jamal, he says, what's the word? My bad, I'm late. It's all right, man. You can catch it back on a repeat if you didn't get a chance to watch it. Please just go back and check it out. Hit that like button for your boy. Hit that subscribe button for your boy if you already haven't. I already know you're a subscriber, so shouts out to you. But definitely you can go back and watch it. And I'm glad that my brother-in-law for giving me that clarification. I wasn't sure because somebody said earlier that Minnesota needed a quarterback. He says Kirk Cousins is on his last year of his deal. So yeah, so it was good with them getting that offensive-minded coach because they still have a quarterback there. And Kirk Cousins is a middle of the pack quarterback. Like to me, he's better than Jimmy Garoppolo. Like Jimmy Garoppolo, everybody's talking about Jimmy Garoppolo's record and things of that nature, him having a winning record, but you have to look at the team that's been around him. Like the 49ers have done a great job of building the offensive line, and they've done a great job of always having a solid defense and giving Jimmy Garoppolo adequate weapons. So when you have a solid defense and a good special teams and then a good head coach and a good coaching staff, Robert Saleh, who they end up getting a head coaching job with the Jets, I think that he's had a solid, team around him. And I think Kirk Cousins is one of those guys. If you go look at his stats this year, he had a really good season. The Minnesota Vikings just didn't make the playoffs, but Kirk Cousins had a really good season. Great passer rating. Didn't throw a lot of picks this year. The Minnesota Vikings, like I said, they just didn't win. So he kind of, his year kind of went under the radar. But I think Kirk Cousins is better than a lot of people think. And I think you can win a championship with a quarterback like Kirk Cousins because we know you don't need an elite quarterback to win a Super Bowl or even get to a Super Bowl. And that's been proven with Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo to me is just an average quarterback. And we've seen him in 2 NFC championship games, the Super Bowl like 2 or 3 years ago against the Chiefs, and then him in the NFC championship game, really the fourth quarter with a 10-point lead, almost getting to another Super Bowl. And we know that Jimmy Garoppolo is just average. So I definitely think you can win with Kirk Cousins. Todrick Davis with a $5 super chat. I appreciate the super chat, man. He says, do you think Ramsey's emotions will cost the Rams? He has that tendency to get full of himself. I think he'll be fine in this game. I don't think that Ramsey is going to do anything to jeopardize the Rams' chance at winning this game. Now, I do think that he got to play with better technique in this game and have his head in the game because we did see against the Buccaneers when the Buccaneers made that huge comeback that he gave up that deep streak or 9 route to Mike Evans, where Mike Evans basically just ran right past him because he was not playing good technique. He kind of fell asleep on Mike Evans. So that's something that he's going to definitely have to clean up that technique in the Super Bowl. because Jamar Chase is no joke. Jamar Chase is a guy that can take a hitch route or a slant to the house. So in this game, he's gonna have his hands full. Like if he's traveling with Jamar Chase one-on-one, he's gonna have his hands full because Jamar Chase is he's that dude. He's one of those guys that's fearless, a great route runner, great at high pointing the football, and to me, he really has no weaknesses because he's a guy that can not only catch a jump ball or a back shoulder, but he's a guy that can also run after the catch and is extremely physical. Like he's not scared to go across the middle. He's fearless. So I think Ramsey is going to definitely be going up against. It's going to be the better of two dogs. Like both of those, Jalen Ramsey's a dog, but Jamar Chase is a dog as well. Jamar Chase is one of my favorite guys to watch in the league as far as wide receivers. If you talk about a player outside of the Atlanta Falcons, Jamar Chase is one of my favorite guys to watch, and he's only a rookie, so he's only going to get better. But I don't think the Rams is going to do anything to cost the Rams in this game, especially because Raheem Morris, as the defensive coordinator, he's a guy that's going to hold you accountable. So I don't see Ramsey getting out of line. If he does get out of line, he'll find himself on the bench, but I don't think he's going to get out of line in this game. I think that Raheem Morris is an experienced defensive coordinator, and I think Ramsey at this point is a veteran cornerback. So if he's smart, as long as he's not getting toasted, or as long as the wide receivers of the Cincinnati Bengals are not taunting him or anything like that, or doing anything to, push him over the edge, I don't see Jalen Ramsey doing anything crazy in this game. Let's see. So I may take a few more questions. I'll take maybe 3 more questions and then that's it. So if you guys have a question, drop it in the chat. Let's see. And this is not a question, but I'll go ahead and read it. Tony Wright, I appreciate that, man. You like my stat guy. I appreciate it. He says Kirk Cousins had 32 touchdowns with 6 interceptions. Yeah, that's crazy. Like if they're in the playoffs, those are MVP type numbers. 32 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. That interception to touchdown ratio is crazy. So Kirk Cousins, like I said, he had a really good season. And that's why I say, to me, he's better than the Jimmy Garoppolo. Like Kirk Cousins is a guy that can win you a game with his arm. Like he's a guy that's really good. He's not going to consistently win you the game with his arm, but he can win a game or two with his arm. So I think that Kirk Cousins is he's one of those guys that's underrated, that kind of goes under the radar because he hasn't had the success in the playoffs and things of that nature. Let's see. Let's see what AJ says. I haven't answered one of his questions today. AJ Evans, what's going on, man? He says the Vikings was just in a place similar to the Falcons. You have all this talent, but you failed to address O-line, and Mike Zimmer was there for too long. At some point, those vets want something different. I think the Vikings did a good job giving Mike Zimmer a chance, for those guys to, get a chance to compete for a Super Bowl and stuff like that. Like if you remember a couple years ago, when they had Stephon Diggs, they were able to beat the Saints and get to the NFC Championship game against Philly when Philly beat them in the NFC Championship game. So I don't think that they held on to Mike Zimmer too long. Mike Zimmer is a veteran coach, had been there for, been in the league for many, many years as a defensive coordinator. And he did a really good job as their head coach. I mean, that defense with Anthony Barr, with Kendricks at the linebacker position, and for years they had Xavier Rhodes as a corner on their team. I think he did a really solid job as their head coach. Wasn't surprised that he was let go because he was there for a really, a pretty good, decent time, but he was winning a lot of games there. So I think they did a good job of giving him a fair shot and, gave him a chance to build, his type of defense and bring in the players that he wanted. I just think it was time for a new voice as far as the Mike Zimmer, Mike Zimmer being fired. But personally, if I were the Vikings, I think that they are a year too late on firing Mike Zimmer, or maybe 2 years late, because I really think that they should have elevated Kevin Stefanski, the offensive coordinator, their former offensive coordinator. He actually is now the head coach for the Cleveland Browns. He was able to get them to a deep playoff run last year with Baker Mayfield, and he's done a solid job at coaching the Cleveland Browns. So I think he would have been a good fit to be the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, but he didn't get that opportunity because he was hired from up under Mike Zimmer. But I definitely think that that's another thing that kind of went overlooked. Mike Zimmer kind of had the similar thing happen to him like Dan Quinn. When Dan Quinn was here, it's like Kyle Shanahan was, hired as an offensive coordinator or as a head coach for the 49ers, but he was our offensive coordinator. So, a lot of the times those are the small, intricate details that we talk about that go overlooked. It's like those guys that you have on your coaching staff, your coordinators, your offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, and, the coaches that are up under the head coach. Those are the guys that are really, working with these guys. Your offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator are like the head coach of the defense, the head coach of the offense. So sometimes that goes overlooked as far as when you lose a guy that's like a coordinator up under the head coach, it kind of gets overlooked. And I think that that's really what happened in this instance with Mike Zimmer. It's like he never found that offensive coordinator, or they never were the same after they lost Kevin Stefanski. They kind of were never the same. But with that being said, I'm gonna get ready to wrap it up, you guys. I appreciate you guys joining in tonight. Appreciate you guys, all of the super chats. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate if you guys just hit the like button. Even if you're not able to send a super chat, if you hit that like button, that helps the algorithm to get my videos out there. So I really appreciate each and every one of you guys. I'm gonna have a lot more coming for you guys. I'm gonna have some guests on the show as well. So you guys just continue to stay tuned. I'm definitely going to be also dropping, like I said, some more videos on draft prospects for the upcoming draft. I have a bunch of guys I have to go and watch, their tapes and things of that nature to see which guys I think the Falcons should draft. But there's a couple videos that I already got in the chamber ready to drop for you guys. So you guys just stay tuned. But I really appreciate each and every one of you guys tuning in tonight. But with that being said, I'll holler at you guys in the next video. As always, Falcons Nation, rise up, and I'll holler at you guys in the next video. See you guys on next Wednesday. You guys have a blessed night. As always, Falcons Nation, rise up. Peace.